Hi friends. If you want to check out 4 looks using the Natasha Denona Star Palette, then please keep on watching. Hi, my name is Alicia. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. And if you are returning, well, thank you for visiting me again. KINKYSWEAT stands for my kinky hair and sweat life. I'm a fitness professional who loves things all movement and beauty. If you want to check out what I do in between the makeups, you can head over to my Instagram. Pretty early on in the video to ask you consider subscribing, but here we are. Timestamps will be down below if you wish to skip over to whatever portion of the video you want to see the most. Today I wanted to dip into the Star Palette as I had recently bought this from the Natasha Denona Black Friday sale. I think at this point, hopefully when I upload the video, that the whole online debacle has been resolved. Many people unfortunately were charged several times, and yes, although the bank could see those charges as fraudulent and refund the money, unfortunately it does take, depending on your bank, several days to get that money refunded, and people are like in the negatives. It's like a really bad situation. I am very lucky to live in New York, and Natasha Denona has a brick and mortar store in the city, so I did not order from the website. I went directly to the store as the sales on the website are the same in store. Afterwards, Beautylish on Black Friday released similar sales. They didn't have the same BOGO special, buy one get one. They did have 30% off several of the palettes, and one of them was the Star Palette. This originally retails for $169. You know, very expensive. And the discount was $118.30, something like that. I have a huge confession to make. Okay, I bought this palette several times from Sephora, and I had returned it several times. I know I'm a terrible person. I'm a wasteful, terrible person. Every time I used it, I just did not understand. I didn't understand the palette. I didn't know what I was doing. I think I was using the wrong brush. I had the wrong approach. And until I thoroughly watched her tutorials, I realized, oh, this is how we got to use this palette. So if any of you are undergoing a similar thing, maybe you already have this, but you didn't touch it because you're like, I don't get it. Hopefully this video will just shed light on the palette in terms of the color story, her approach, and maybe some techniques that will help you use this palette more often. If you're just tuning in to a Natasha Denona video for the first time, Natasha Denona shadows are very expensive. They are made in Italy, and Natasha herself plays a huge role in the cosmetic chemistry of things. A lot of people feel that she changes her formula a lot and that she shouldn't. So here is a prime example. I recently bought palette number 10 from the Natasha Denona store for her BOGO event. Now, originally when I swatched this in store, the tester's True Gold was this one here that I switched with the single. The True Gold that I originally swatched in my Black Friday haul video was this one here. And it's funny, while swatching it in the video, I was like, this is a beautiful color, but not the one that I swatched in store. And if you see here, they are completely different. This was in the original 10 palette, and then when I went back and said, hey, so just so you know, I'm not crazy, because at the time I didn't have this with me. I asked the store associate, I think her name's Rubina. Hi, Rubina. I was like, listen, just open a 10 pan palette in one of your drawers and compare it to your tester. And lo and behold, she was like, oh wow, they are not the same. And I'm like, I know they are not the same. Funny, I think True Gold exists in her green brown palette. I'm gonna see if I could find it. I've had these for quite a while. I don't even know if they're still good. Here it is. This is the original True Gold in her 28 pan palette, and it's still very beautiful. Look at that impact. And I think I've had this palette for several years. Several. It doesn't smell weird, so I think it should be okay. The story behind the True Gold switch, the manager was telling me that unfortunately, as beautiful as this color is, it is very delicate. Lots of times where makeup was being delivered, the delivery man will drop the boxes on the floor, will kick around the boxes, and that was it for the shadows. They could not take that type of violence, and they were finding that a lot of the shadows were broken and they could not sell them in that way. or they will break via transit, and by the time they got to the customer, they were just completely mutilated. So she had to change the formula into something a lot more compact, not as delicate, and although it is not the same color, it's still beautiful, absolutely, but it doesn't have the same texture, and yes, it does not have the same impact whatsoever. Maybe you would appreciate that, because if you feel that the original, I believe this is considered to be her metallic texture, because next to all the numbers, she has a letter representing the texture of the shadow, and here it says 20M, and M stands for metallic. So her original metallic formula, very delicate, very texture. You really have to press it in with your finger to ensure that the pigments and the particles stay on your lid and don't fall on your face. What is with the construction right now? Don't you know I'm filming? Excuse me. So yes, this has a lot of impact, but is not so practical. Unfortunately, I think Natasha thought about this. Despite how much you might love a certain color, certain texture, if it's just beyond the most beautiful thing ever, if it's not practical to sell long term, then you have to change it. And even though people might have loved the original true gold metallic finish, it doesn't pay to keep using that formula if it just keeps breaking all the time. And if you are looking to sell this mass market, then something has to give. And unfortunately, with a lot of colors, I feel in her 5 pans that have been reformulated had to undergo the same process because they were breaking and they were not lasting through transit. I wanted to give you that update because I'm sorry that I did not mention that in the video, because I thought I was going crazy when I swatched what was originally in the 5 pan versus what I swatched in store with the tester. So I didn't mention that, not because I'm keeping anything from you guys. I just had a moment of like, wait a minute, excuse me. If you're looking to get the original true gold, you might have to get it as a single, and it still might be available in Beautylish, but be prepared to repress it. I had to, because even switching the singles, they're magnetic. This completely fell out of the pan. I had to carefully put it back in pan, took my little scoopy of alcohol, repressed it, and as good as new. So I don't think that altered the finish or the texture. Is still working just fine. Back to the Star palette. If this is your first time seeing it, I'll quickly go over the details. We got 18 shadows. That's why it is more expensive than her 15 pan palette. Looking at 2.5 grams each pan, so you get quite a lot, or 0.08 ounces of product. And of course, like I mentioned before, this product is made in Italy. So we're looking at a 24-month suggested shelf life from opening, paraben-free, not tested on animals. This is, however, not vegan, as I feel she uses animal-derived ingredients like the carmine, especially in these red tones. I'm just quickly going over and finding that ingredient because I believe it's in here somewhere, like in Phoenix, for instance. Yep, carmine is in here, so if you have a problem with that, then most certainly stay away from this palette. This is the packaging. It's definitely its own size because Metropolis, that just got released during the holiday, is a little smaller than this. This is a little longer, or actually it's the same size as the 28-ish, maybe, but a little shorter. I love the stars. I love the finish of this palette. It's really beautiful and definitely appealed to me from the get-go just with the packaging alone. Now here it is. This is how it's organized. You got 9 on one side and 9 on the other. All of Natasha's palettes are designed as a matrix. I addressed this fully in the Metropolis video, but I failed to mention that she actually does this with all her palettes. It is a matrix. No matter how you approach the rows or the columns, it's an eye look. Whether you go diagonally, down, or across, and same thing here for this 9 pan portion of the palette. You could go that way, you could go that way, you could go that way. It's a look. And with these, this is a very special palette because according to the Natasha Denona team, this is Natasha's favorite palette. This is the palette she uses if she's doing makeup on herself. Also, this is the palette where she released her new creamy matte formula that I think we all know and love. I think she also released the chroma crystal texture for the first time with this palette. So there was a lot of newness with the Star palette that I feel people were like, What is it? How do we do it? And with the sleeve here, like I mentioned with the 5-pen palette, not only do you get the name of the shade, you get the number and a letter. For instance, Vega 111 CM. CM stands for Creamy Matte. M stands for Metallic. K stands for Chroma Crystal. DC stands for Duochrome. What else? I think those are the only textures we have present in this palette. We got the Creamy Matte, Chroma Crystal, Duochrome, and Metallic. So we're dealing with 4 different textures in Star. I wanted to get on here and do a few eye looks for you guys, maybe going over different techniques, because like anything, I think Natasha Denona formulates based on her own makeup technique and application. She sometimes doesn't go in with the transition shade first. Sometimes she'll pat down a color heavily on the outer corner or lid, and then she goes in with the matte to blend it out, instead of going in traditionally, as we've seen all over the internet, going in with a transition shade first and then a darker shade and building up from there. I'm actually going to do it the way she does in her tutorial that she has not only on her webpage but on her YouTube channel as well. I'll quickly go over swatches. If you don't want to see this, just skip over. Spectrum, deep antique gold with a crystal finish. Earth, dark chocolate brown with a creamy matte finish. Bellatrix, rose gold with metallic finish. Flesh, warm peach with a creamy matte finish. Orion, deep blue brown with a duochrome finish. Gemma, mahogany brown with a cream matte finish, although I think this is more of her cream to matte, not like a traditional matte like we saw here with these two. Atria, copper orange with a metallic finish. Titania, taupe brown with a creamy matte finish. Lastly, on this side we have Cosmo, vintage brass with a crystal finish. So here is the first side. I love these tones. I'm swatching with my left hand. So difficult. Diadem, warm taupe gray with a creamy matte finish. Vega, I'm thinking Vega from Street Fighter Turbo. Soft tea rose with a creamy matte finish. Galaxia, sheer icy white with a crystal finish. Phoenix, brick red with a creamy matte finish. Supernova, silver taupe with a duochrome finish. Electra, deep plum with a creamy matte finish. Polaris, all these X-Men names, hey! White gold with a crystal finish. Attique, sandy beige with a creamy matte finish. And lastly, we have Rhea, peach gold with a metallic finish. Here are both sides of the palette. You can see these shades marry well with each other. They're very harmonious. So let's get in, try these shades out, go over different techniques, and see if we could get the most out of our Star palette. And with that said, friends, shaking things up a bit with a new eyeshadow base. Not a new product, but I'm using the Shiseido concealer in 301. I like it as an eye base, but we're gonna see it in action in this video. I'm gonna start off with my favorite eye look using this palette, going in with Orion. Orion is a duochrome shade. It is very, very creamy. I find it is best applied with the finger. Now, if you are not about that life, I feel if you cannot or wish to not use your fingers, do not get this palette, because even if you could successfully apply Orion with a brush, you will not successfully apply the chroma crystals with a brush. Sonaji Jumbo Blender. With Orion, so you can see that in action using a brush. You could definitely make it happen, and it's crazy. You see more of the brown duochrome on camera, and you will see more of the turquoise in real life. I'm using my finger because I just rather get it on in that way. Actually, in the tutorial, Natasha started off with Spectrum, and she placed it on the outer corner and then went in with the other shades. The problem I see with that is because the chroma crystal has a lot of texture. If you brush against it, the particles will fall. So that's why we're gonna only leave that till the very end of the eye look. But you can see how this beautifully blends in the skin. You could put Orion under the lash line and be done. look number one. You could take any of the lighter beige shades in here, or you could take Phoenix or Electra, the red and the magenta shade, and buff it into the crease, and you're done. Titania with my reference number 16, just so you can see how that is in the crease with Orion. It's a really nice tone and great if you just want to use this on its own to add some dimension to your crease. So MICHI Crease Pro with Earth. This packs a lot of punch. I'm using the very tip of the brush, pull this shade closer to the lid and not so high in the crease, and that's going to add really nice contrast here and some nice shading. I'm using the very tip of the brush to just help the shadow glide here, not letting the skin skip or tug, to ensure a smooth blend. And of course, Natasha's creamy mattes are just phenomenal. I think if you use the right brush and the right technique, you will get the best results. Back in with my reference number 16 just to help buff the edges. Spectrum. This is a very, very textured shade. You can even see here on my fingertip. I feel the best way to apply this type of shade, because you will see Natasha tap it in. Don't even tap. You gotta press and hold, and then from there release your finger, go in and just buff it out gently from there. If you go in right away tapping, you will get fallout. You might still get fallout regardless, even with this technique I'm showing you. With that said, you might have to do your eyes first, and that will just have to be the plan for you. Taking a little more, again, pressing first, and then lightly tapping around the edges. This is such a beautiful color. The brassiness of it, the antique hue, I feel is like what makes it so stand out. Now carefully, I'm using the brush with Earth, and I'm just buffing the edges of Spectrum so it could just melt in with the creamy matte and look a little more diffused. So MICHI Worker 3. With the same Earth shade and connecting top to bottom. She used Cosmo on the inner part of the eye. I want to go in with this shade here. What is it called? Atria. This is with my prototype shader brush. The inner part of the lower lash line. This is like a very goldy coppery type of shade. I'm taking the side of my pinky with Spectrum and nudging it right here on the outer lower lash line, because I want the Spectrum to take over the majority of the outer corner, and I really love that gradient effect. Pulling it out a little more. Taking Cosmo, dealing again a lot of texture, inner part of my eye, press and hold, and then from there you tap. So I still got a little fallout. It's not crazy. I think the point of using this technique is to minimize the amount of fallout and not get a crap ton. Going back in with Orion and nudging it between Cosmo and Spectrum. So Natasha was saying how you have to let these kind of sit on your skin. They will set, and then you will not experience fallout throughout the day. I wore this eye look yesterday for 8 hours and I did not experience that. Now, everyone's going to be different. I could only convey to you what I underwent with these shadows. I think, again, if you could use these techniques to minimize the fallout, leave it alone so it can set, you will not experience it throughout the day. Another technique you could use is to place loose powder under the eye, so when you dust the particles away, they will not streak. But even that, you saw those particles whisked away pretty easily. I'm going to take Cosmo with my finger again, and I want that to be my standout inner corner shade. So I'm gently pressing that onto the inner corner because I really love that brassy gold effect there. She didn't do this in her tutorial, but the next step I want to take, Electra with my MICHI Crease Pro. Very lightly on the inner part of my eye, whipping it here close to the brow bone. So you see that the tone from Orion is kind of, it says brown, but I sometimes, depending on, it could read a little red. So I'm placing that plum shade on the inner part of my eye and melting it with everything else. So I like to put in a little color there. I like to sweep it through my brow, very much inspired by Gandalf Sandwich. Love her. Her looks make my looks look like preschool looks. I'm telling you, she is so talented. But she sometimes does this shadow technique where she'll put the shadow near and around the front of her brow, and I feel it just makes it really beautifully harmonious and just adds a little bit of color without necessarily having to put more in your crease. Go and fall out from that, but it's all good. We fixed it. And that is look number 1, but let's move on to this eye. I want to get in on this gray because I haven't touched it yet. And with that said, Sonergy Crease 2. Sometimes she goes in with the transition shade first, friends. It really, I guess, all depends. She called this a warm gray, I believe, in the descriptions. I'm building this up and I'm taking my time with the blending so there's no skipping and uneven texture. I really like the tone of this gray. It's definitely on the warmer side. Warmer side indeed. All right, not too bad. Since we started with this color, let's go down this column and go in with Phoenix. Sonergy Soft Shader. I'm gonna pack that on first on the outer V and just rely on that patting motion to blend the shadow in on the crease, which is something you can expect from using her creamy mattes. I mean, they practically blend themselves, and I feel you don't need to do much when combining and layering shadows. That's a really fun combination. I'm actually gonna bring it more in towards the inner corner. Crease number 2 again, just to blend out the edges, adding a little more of that gray shade. Full beans. Taking Phoenix with the soft shader and pulling it under my lower lash line and up towards the lash, top lash. Polaris going in with our finger, because remember it is a chroma crystal shade. Press, don't mean to flip you off. Press and tap. Oh, that's pretty. I don't know how successful we'll be with the brush. I'm using my Refer Prototype shader to gently press that Polaris shade on the inner lower half of my lash line, and also bringing it to the inner corner. I think that had left over of the shade I placed here, so that's why it looks a little gold. Sorry. Taking a little bit of the gray on the edge of Phoenix just to mesh top with bottom. All right, let's slap on some lashes and I'll be right back. Here's the finished look, friends. Favorite lashes on that are falling off, sorry about that. Ardell Naked Lashes in the style 421. And here's a close-up of how the lids look, how the crease is looking. And here is how the Chroma Crystal Spectrum looks on the lid. Here's how Polaris looks on this eye. And because when you apply the Chroma Crystal shade on the lid, they are inevitably going to melt into the matte. I just love how overall the eye looks just so dazzling. And here's a wide shot of the look, friends. On the lips I have Natasha Denona's I Need a Nude lipstick in Noah with her lip pencil in L5 Antique Rose. I absolutely love these tones. I know I guess I wasn't in the right headspace when I first used this palette. There's something about brassy red, grays. I mean, there's something so grungy about this palette, and it's like a new age, neutrals palette. Despite the presence of plums, reds, and turquoises that are duochrome, it still manages to be earthy, but with a little bit of spice. And again, I just didn't realize at the time, my application technique just sucked big time, but I wore this eye yesterday and I absolutely love it. So throughout like the 8 hours, Orion definitely starts to fade. To ensure that it doesn't, I will go in with a creamy base that's maybe like a dark gray or even a black, just to make sure the shadow upholds longer, because unfortunately I do have oily lids. You could probably powder your concealer, maybe that will help the longevity, but all in all, the colors stay really nice throughout the day, and I just love the smokiness of the eye, but it not again relying on just brown, but we got plum, we got turquoise, we have like antique gold here, and it all ties in really beautifully together. So let's get into another look, maybe something more low-key, and I will see you back on here in a minute. Let's go in with this row because it seems pretty simple and basic, so let's see what it could offer us. Hello, words. Taking Vega with my reference number 16 and just placing that on the crease. Isn't this like one of Mel's favorite shades? I think she was saying when she did the guess what shade this is thing with Kelsey. Is a really nice light rosy shade. Perhaps could even be used as a blush. So this is what we're getting from Vega. Vega. Atik, my Wayne Goss number 4. And these are definitely more on the powdery side, so I would suggest that you pat or tap off excess before you go in on the lid. Atik is very, very light. Perhaps this is best used as a blend out shade for the next one coming up. Going in with Supernova, the second duochrome of the palette. And again, her duochromes and metallics apply so easily with a finger. It's hard to see the duochrome on camera, but it's so pretty. Taking Atik with my Wayne number 4 on the inner part of the lid, just combining it with Vega, applying a little more here. Vega on the lower lash line. Sonaji Smudge It 2 with Supernova on the lower lash line. Pinky with Galaxia. In a corner, I know this was not in the trio, but you could, you could do whatever you, you could do whatever you want. You could jump around to whatever shade you want. Definitely wanted to use Galaxia for the inner corner highlight. Taking Earth with my Hakuhoro, oh, the number's not on here. I rather use my Sonia brush, but I don't know where she is. This is a little stiffer than the flat definer, but I wanted to use some of Earth on the lash line here. It is the matte shade on the other side of the palette. So what we'll do is punch in close to the lashes and then carefully pull up to make that very soft wing. Doing that also to the very outer third of the lower lash line. And look number 1 is done. I want to go in with this row because I want to use one of the chroma crystals all over the lid. Wayne Goss number 4 with Titania. See how this looks as just like a standalone matte. Oh, and that's nice. Very soft but neutral. Excuse me, can you be in frame please? This is a very smaller brush than what I would use typically for the first crease shade, but what we'll do, just go in with my reference number 16 with no additional product, kind of whip around that shade to further diffuse it. Tapping in with a little more Titania just to make that a little more impactful. Here we go. Cosmo. Oh, that was the wrong finger. I gotta go in with this finger because I'm doing the other eye. Press, not too hard, especially if you have contacts on. There we go. Wow, that is some freaking shade. Gonna lighten you up. It's getting dark out there. This almost reminds me of Gigabyte from Subversive. Almost. Carefully with a little more Titania to buff between matte and chroma crystal. But that wasn't too bad. We didn't get any fallout from that application. Already used this shade. Let's go to Bellatrix. Bellatrix is so pretty. And technically, it's in this column, so it does go with Cosmo. Right there. Oh, look at that. I love it. Bellatrix is so pretty. It's like a rose gold, but like, it's just the pinkiness. Perfect. Atik with my soft shader on the lower lash line. Cosmo on the center of the lower lash line, applying that with my pinky. Bellatrix on the inner part of my lower lash line and more on the inner corner as well. All right, eyes are done. Let's slap on these lashes and I'll be right back. Close-up of the look, friends, of both eyes. Again, same Ardell lashes, naked lashes in 421. I really love how Supernova looks with the peachiness from Vega and a little bit of Earth on the lash line. Really intensifies it and have some like the wing smoky look is I'm digging it. And Cosmo, look at freaking Cosmo on the lid, friends. I mean, that is simply gorgeous. And it nudged here right at the center of my lower lash line just to pull everything together. And just using that matte shade, again, we could go in with the deeper mattes in here to create more smoke, but that is the freedom of the palette and versatility. You could definitely keep it medium or you could amp it up with extra smoke. You have the shades to do that with. Same lipstick from the last two looks. I Need a Nude in Noah, lined with her lip liner in L5 Antique Rose. I'm digging this palette more so than I have ever when I first used it and the times I did after. I think because since I played with it, I understand it better, I understand the color story better and just what it has to offer. I mean, I can get over this shade. It's just so beautifully brassy. It's so grungy, but it has beautiful shine. But then you have this eye that's like low key, but still has character. I mean, you could definitely get away with this as like a soft daily smoky eye. You could keep just the smoke wing, or you could use more of Earth on the V to create a little more like traditional V smoke. I mean, you could do so many things. Now, I know I picked this up from the sale, but if you are still thinking about getting Star, if you were unsure of it, Couple of things to know. This color story, despite how beautifully gorgeous it is very specific. There are no blacks in here, and I think Natasha did that on purpose so she could really challenge your creativity in terms of the smoky looks you can achieve just with the shades provided. I mean, black is an easy way to go. Why not create smoke? I think we did with Spectrum on the first eye, or even Earth. Earth has beautiful depth. I feel you could add on to whatever eye look you like. This has nice smoke as well. This is a little lighter, but it's not like a traditional creamy matte, although that's what she calls it. I think it's more of like her cream to matte formula. And just nice you have these tones to play with to just do something different. If you are comfortable using your fingers with this palette, then you will love it. If you don't like using fingers, if you feel like that is just a huge no for you, then I don't think you're going to enjoy it. I had trouble picking up the Chroma Crystal shades with the brush. I know she used a brush in her demo and it looked amazing. I just rather use my finger to ensure that I don't get the most amount of fallout. And I think you have to do that with Cosmo. You have to do that with, what is that shade called? Galaxia. The mattes are phenomenal. They're creamy matte. This is where the palette she introduced this creamy matte formula for the first time. I think if you use a beautifully soft natural hair brush, you will get the most pigment and the most just beautiful performance from these textures. I don't know how these work with synthetic brushes, so sound off below if you are a synthetic brush user and you had a good time or not so good time with the creamy mattes. Orion, like, I know we've seen this shade before, but this shade here, like, with these cool tone browns and plums and reds paired with this shade, you can even pair it with the gray and look how cool that looks, right? And you can even go in with this shade here. That's one eye look right there. So you have a lot of opportunity for different looks. And again, like I said in the beginning of the video, Natasha designs her palettes like a matrix. You could go however you like and you will get an eye look. I think it's just like how Charlotte Tilbury names and numbers her shades and guiding you in how to apply them. Natasha wants you to have a seamless experience. She does the thinking for you. She just wants you to look at a row, column, or diagonal line and know those shades will work together no matter how you slice it. And that's, I think, a part of what you pay for as well, the curation, the thought behind it. Many people think that she repeats her shades and she dupes herself. Keep in mind, these technically are pro palettes. So when you have a pro palette, let's say the Viseart palettes, the 12 pan palettes, you have shades that might look similar in color but are different in undertone. And it might not look different to you, it might not look different on your eyes on camera in person, but it does make a difference if you're doing makeup on several people. Those variances in undertone make a huge difference in how the makeup looks on them in the end. If you're just using all these shades on yourself, then yes, they might all look the same, and that is a risk you take if you choose to spend money on technically a pro palette. I know she markets these to all audiences, whether you're a beauty enthusiast or a pro, so she still has to make money. She has a bottom line. She's not just going to market her palettes to the pros anymore. I mean, the floodgates open when Nikki Tutorials showed the 28 pan palettes on her video and people were asking about it. Those, again, these 28 pan palettes were originally for the students in her Natasha Denona school to use, because these are basically all the 5 pan palettes combined in one, and she wanted everyone just to have all the shades and textures in one place at a cheaper price point because they're all in one palette versus getting the 5 pan palettes or even singles individually. So that, like the gold palette, I go on about how all the different beiges in there look the same on me. It's not about me. It's a 15 shade palette that could be used on several skin tones and they will yield different results. I love the Lila palette because although there might be shades that look similar, they actually don't, depending on the metallics you pair them with. Even on myself, I find that those variations are necessary. Metropolis, people are saying that the teal looks similar to the navy, depending on whether you apply the forest or teal shade with something more green or more teal will just highlight that tone even more so. That's my approach. That's how I choose to see her palettes, to use her palettes, and to justify the price. If you're going to be really upset about spending this much money and you feel the chroma crystals are crumbly, this and that, just don't get it. Don't get it. There is so much more eyeshadow out there that performs well, that if it suits your lifestyle and it aligns well with how you apply makeup and how you like your makeup to look, skip it. I decided to get this palette because I love Natasha Denona shadows. I felt like I was doing something wrong. I wanted to give this another shot, and boy, am I happy that I did. And happy that I got at a discounted price. So let me know if you have Star, what you think about it. If you played with it in the past and you just didn't get the looks that you were hoping to achieve, maybe, hopefully, this video helped. Even if you don't have the Star palette, friends, maybe you have similar shades in this palette in your collection, similar textures to the chroma crystals, and you needed just some inspiration in terms of different eye looks you could achieve with these similar shades and textures. Let me know down below, and until then, friends, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to my channel. And until then, I'll see you on here again with another tutorial, demo, review, shop recommendations list. Or you get ready with me. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.